Well, I'm back for the final day of the 100 horror films in 31 days. I completed 113 films, and 62 of those were first time watches, which is basically I try to strive for half of what I watch as first time viewings. It's getting harder and harder as many horror films as I've seen, but I managed to accomplish it. Halloween Day was a great day, a productive day anyway, as far as movie watching. I got in 8 films by the time I went to bed late last night. So I finished strong on this challenge. I hope everybody had a great and safe, happy Halloween. Feel kind of melancholy about it ending, but also a little bit of relief because it is difficult to watch these many films and do anything else productive. Alright, so let's get on with it. It's been a couple years since I watched the Elm Street series. I just got a wild hair, decided to crank them back up, and I watched for the Nightmare on Elm Street collection the original 1984's Nightmare on Elm Street. And of course we all know about this film, and Wes Craven was director. Robert Englund plays Freddy. I don't think I need to say anything about the film other than to say that it is a classic. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10. I think it's an 8 out of 10 movie. But I would say this. I don't think that it would even be an 8 out of 10 without Heather Langenkamp. I think Heather Langenkamp is the glue that holds this thing together. Yeah, Freddy's cool. The idea of a child killer populating your dreams, as you know, and the concept of nightmares is a good one. I think it'd have been successful with or without Heather Langenkamp. All I'm saying is that a really good horror film was a great horror film because of Heather Langenkamp. And the reason I say that is most of the movie is really focused on her. I mean, Freddy has very little screen time, relatively. He's almost like Dracula from the Hammer films. I mean, whenever he shows his presence, obviously Robert Englund is a powerful enough actor that every few seconds of screen time is like gold. So the movie's really the movie to me hinges on how well Heather Langenkamp pulls it off. And I think it's a great example of the difference between All Cheerleaders Die or Happy Death Day and those type of actresses and Heather Langenkamp. Heather Langenkamp is believable. She doesn't look like she fell off a Sports Illustrated modeling cover. I mean, but what she does have is an ability to act, an engaging personality. We like her. She's a likable person, and we're empathetic about what happens to her. All the key variables for success, which today's horror films tragically have no concept of. Just Happy Death Day is a great example of who gave a shit. I didn't give a shit about any of those characters, other than to the extent of watching them die. So I think I think modern day directors could really benefit from watching the classics and trying to understand why are the classics classics. It's not really the monsters. It's not Jason. It's not Freddy. It's not Michael Myers. It's the empathetic characters that occupy most of the screen time that I think are the more important variables in why horror movies are great versus just okay. So that's my little speech on Nightmare on Elm Street 1984. Then I watched Freddy's Revenge Part 2. And obviously when this came out, and even still today, the kind of semi-comedic turn it took, black comedy turn, I think turned a lot of people off to the film. But I like it. And I like it more each time I watch it. The dance that I agree that the dance that this guy does in the film is just cringeworthy, but still, I think it's a fun Freddy movie, and I gave it a 7 out of 10. I don't think it's garbage at all. I think it's a good film. Then I watched Dream Warriors Part 3, and I actually like Dream Warriors is probably my favorite of the series. I think it has a lot of high production values, a lot of good acting, great script, great story, and I think it's the best of the series. So I give it a 9 out of 10. The after I stopped at this point because after Part 3, the series takes I think a considerable nosedive. They're not bad films, but they drop down into the 5, 6 range. They turn more comedic, which is to me hit and miss. So yeah, that was the Friday the 13th. I'm sorry, that was the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I really think that for such a great franchise for this to be the extent of what we have on Blu-ray as far as a set is a tragedy. I mean, disc 2, they even combined the films. I mean, Freddy's Revenge and Dream Warriors are on the same discs. We really desperately need someone to give the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise a Blu-ray box treatment like the Halloween franchise. So that's it for the Friday the 13th. Then I switched gears and decided to watch a Boris Karloff film, a Val Lewton directed film from the 40s, and that is The Body Snatcher. The Body Snatcher is probably my favorite Val Lewton film, and it's actually quickly has become my favorite Boris Karloff film. I think Boris Karloff, as the grave robber, really basically Boris is killing people and then selling them to a doctor, kind of a Burke and Hare scheme. He's so creepy and slimy, and it's just a great performance on his part. I think it's a real talent when you can be pleasant and at the same time extremely creepy at the same time. And Boris Karloff is nothing but gushingly pleasant and he's just creepy at the same time. He's fantastic in this. Bela Lugosi is in this as kind of the butler of the doctor. Great movie. Very atmospheric. It stands up to repeat viewings. It's probably the best of the Burke and Hare stories. So yeah, that's The Body Snatcher. What Halloween would be complete without watching John Carpenter's classic Halloween, 1978. I watched it last year and did a review of it. If you're interested in my thoughts last year, you can watch last year's video. It's a 10 out of 10 movie. It's a slasher classic. You've got the proto slashers of Psycho and Black Christmas, and then you've got the pure originator slashers, which I think Halloween, coming out in 1978. Those are really the top echelon of slasher films that set the genre on fire. It's a great film. It holds up to repeat viewings. And, every time that, I think this is one of the best chase type films you're ever going to see. I talked a little bit about this in last October's challenge. And every year, every time I watch this, it has that same unnerving impact, even though I've seen it zillions of times. And when Michael Myers is chasing Jamie Lee Curtis, I still get that kind of, hold on to the edge of your seat kind of thing, because that John Carpenter was a maestro at playing with time and space and making it tension filled. It's almost the same kind of tension you feel when you're watching a movie of somebody that's like standing on the side of a building, and on a balcony or the edge of a building, or if you're afraid of heights, that kind of feeling. But these chase scenes when Myers is chasing Jamie Lee Curtis down the stairs and through the kitchen and across the street, it's always filmed in such a way that you know that basically he's close to getting her, or should get her, basically, because the distance between him and the door. I use the kitchen as a great example. When he comes through the door of the kitchen, and she's got to break the glass, move the rake, open the door, get through the kitchen distance is not, there's not enough distance for her to accomplish all that once he's through the door. And that illogic creates a lot of tension. You don't think about the illogic of it when you first see it, but upon repeat viewings, it's illogical, but it works. And it still gives you, that kind of tension that I think makes the movie a masterpiece. A couple other things I noticed, just little, and I don't know if these have been identified or not, but little faux pas. For the first time, I noticed a day for night screw up when Michael Myers is following Jamie Lee Curtis and her friend after her friend sees her dad, the cop, and they drive off. Michael Myers is kind of following them around. It's broad daylight, and then when they finally reach their destination and pull over, it's pitch dark. So that's the first time I noticed that day for night kind of screw up or transition issue. And then the final little nitpicky thing is if you watch the very end of the film, when the camera is zooming through the house and you go back to the scene where the couch where Jamie Lee Curtis stabs him with the knitting needle, the knife is in the wrong place. The knife is like prominently displayed on the floor in front of the sofa. And I don't think it could be there based on the scene that we saw. But I just noted there's a big knife. There's just a big knife sitting there. It's like, how did the knife get there? Anyway, it's a masterpiece. If you watch it enough, you start to pick up on unimportant things like that. All right. Next up, a Charles Band film I actually like, Prison. 1987, I believe. $1988. This is a great Shout Factory release. Got an audio commentary with the director, Rennie Harlin, a making of retrospective. But yeah, Prison is a film I'd never seen before. This was my first viewing. Basically, a prison becomes this supernatural battleground, if you will. But I think it's done very, very well. A guy that's basically been executed for murder returns seeking vengeance from a brutal guardskeeper. I didn't realize that Rennie Harlin directed Cliffhanger with the Sylvester Stallone film. That's a good one. And he directed Nightmare on Elm Street 4. Anyway, the film stars Viggo Mortensen. I really liked it. I thought it was. I don't think a lot of the Charles Band films are kind of silly. I don't think this film ventured way into the silliness factor that is as typical of some of his films. I thought it played it straight and serious, and it works. It works as a supernatural tale, and I like the setting of the prison. It's kind of a contained. I like contained settings, and that's what you got with this film. So the Shout Factory release has a DVD and Blu-ray combo. But yeah, I highly recommend Prison. I give it a 7 out of 10. Next up, I knew I would not finish the challenge without a Universal classic. I picked up and watched Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi playing the monster. It's a short 75-minute watch, so it was an easy watch. I watched this while we were giving out candy. Of course, in this one, Frankenstein's monster is blind. He was blind from the previous film, Ghost of Frankenstein. The lab caught on fire, and Frankenstein lost his sight as due to a failed brain transplant. So if you're watching Frankenstein meets the Wolfman and you haven't watched Ghost of Frankenstein, you're going to be completely lost as to why the monster is blind and can't see. Now, if you know all those films and you know the backstory, here's my question for you. When Wolfman Lon Chaney finds the monster frozen in the ice underneath the castle and unthaws the monster, the first thing he says is, well, you know where the doctor's records are kept. Help me find them so that I can be cured of my lycanthrope issue. So, Chaney's following the monster around to find the book, and the monster goes right to the book. How does the monster know where the book is if he's blind? So anyway, but I still love it. It's a universal classic. It's really made for kids, though. It's or people like me that have never grown up. Anyway, great movie. By the way, the battle between Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman only lasts like 90 seconds. It's at the very, very end of the film. I finished the day with another film I really enjoyed, and that's Arachnophobia, 1990, with Jeff Daniels and John Goodman. Basically, the storyline is a scientist goes to Venezuela and finds this very rare spider, and the spider gets stuck in the luggage and comes back, and then they terrorizes the town. It's a very poisonous, deadly spider. It's supposed to be kind of a horror comedy. It's very much a light-hearted horror movie, but it's very enjoyable, very entertaining, and there's no CGI to screw it up. Thankfully, we don't get any CGI. I was very pleased about that. So I can definitely recommend Arachnophobia as a 7 out of 10. Well, guys, that's going to wrap up the 100 horror films in 31 days. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed the videos, and thanks for watching.